Okay, lecture number 26, and today we are completing the induction motor. As you can see, the contents are related to the two things or two articles actually, article numbers 6.11 and 6.12, and by chance you also have done these two articles as experiment in your lab also, because you are doing this block rotor test, the no load test, and you're also working on the induction generator part as well in your lab. Today we are going to discuss this too, and then I'm going to also do one numerical. So practically this is one numerical at this point. So we are going to do one numerical as well. This is from your solved examples over here. Okay, first of all, the equivalent circuit over here. I have the equivalent circuit, the same equivalent circuit. I am copying the very same equivalent circuit over here. The phase voltage is there, the R1 is there, JX1 is there, RC is the core losses, which is actually the hysteresis and the eddy current losses. JXM, the air gap magnetization, E1 or actually EA effective into ER0 is actually the voltage induced in the rotor referred to stator side. This is very important. The questions can be asked every time whenever I'm starting an induction motor. I repeat this over here for each element, because in a short question this can be asked to you, what is this E1, what is this term. So this is actually the voltage induced in the rotor referred to the stator side. Okay? But if there is a transformer over there and if there is that variable supply and all that stuff coming in, then it's the different thing. Plus this R2 by S, this can be bifurcated into two parts. We told you this previously as well, that this was R2 and 1 minus S over S. What was R2? This was for the rotor copper losses over there. This one was for the P converted, which is actually the converted power into your mechanical source. JX2 is the leakage reactance of the rotor. And this equivalent circuit, when it is bifurcated, here you can see what I have done, R2 and R2 1 by S over here. So I have bifurcated. If you add these two, certainly this is equal to R2 by S over there. Now the thing over here is this, that we need to find out these values of R1, JX1, RC, JXM, these two elements, or actually R2 by S is actually the element, and then JX2. Now, if you remember your transformer, in transformer we had two tests done in the lab also and in the theory part also before your midterm. That was the open circuit test and the short circuit test. Now, open circuit test in transformer was this, that you were not applying any load over there, and you can find out the core losses that were happening over there by assuming one approximation that the primary winding losses were negligible at that time, and assuming that I0 current was very small. Here, the problem over here for the no load test for a motor is this, that a motor at no load means that it's still turning. It's still giving out some mechanical output power, and that mechanical output power is being used to overcome the friction of the bearing, the friction of the air, or the windage losses which are happening inside. Because it's not a vacuum, it's actually filled with air. So the problem over here is this, that this is not an open circuit at this point or anywhere here. This is actually a short circuit over here. Not actually a short circuit, but using some resistance over there. So when you're going to do a no load test of this machine, one thing I guess you will witness this one when you're doing this experiment in the lab is this, that in the lab our every machine is connected with another machine mechanically. So this means that that machine on which you are going to do a no load test, it's not actually totally no load. It has some load because the shaft is connected with another machine, because we have always a motor and generator coupled together. If this machine is working as a motor, the other one works as a generator, or vice versa, so on. So technically the values which you are taking out in your lab, they may be a little bit false over there in that case. So if you want to do it, the no load test, the first and foremost thing, the shaft should not be connected to anything, which means that it can only turn at its friction and windage losses, and otherwise there is no other issue or no other power loss, that is the P converted. So over here, the three-phase induction motor, the same thing that you are doing in your lab over here is this. This is the same current coil, the same potential coil, and for those who have missing, this one over here is the watt meter number 1. So I will call this one as the W1, And for those, this one is the W2. So this is my watt meter 2, and I hope you still remember it, that you are measuring W1 plus W2 in your lab. And why you are doing this? Because this is a balanced load. By balanced load, I mean that this current IA, supposedly I call this IA, this current as IB, and this current as IC. All of these three currents are almost same. Now practically you won't see them very same in the lab. Why? Because these machines are now working from a very lot of time. So maybe some of the winding resistance has changed in any one of them, maybe the inductance has changed. So maybe a little bit 5% to 10% deviation can still occur over there. But the point over here is it that you are actually going to run this machine at no load, that is actually at the rated voltage over there, so that the power which is actually going to flow in it, and I am interested only in the power P, that power P is actually going to be used inside this R1. It's going to be used inside this RC, and it is going to be used inside these two resistances, which are actually R2 by S. But the reason I have actually taken them as R2 and R2 by this two separate, because R2 is actually corresponding to the rotor copper losses, and R2 into 1 minus S divided by S is actually the power converted. So that's why this R2 1 minus S over S, and if it is working at no load, the slip is not going to be more than like something 0.01 or 0.02. If it's a good machine. But if it's a very bad machine, then certainly even at no load, the slip may be like something 3 or 4%, but really possible, but still 0.01 to 0.02. So that's why this resistance, I have represented it as R friction and windage. Now, converting this one into an R friction and windage, this means that this resistance is going to actually dissipate that R friction and windage, and the main power is actually going to be used over here in this resistance. So this value of this resistance is actually going to be using the most power over there. So the first approximation, now this test has a lot of approximations coming in. Now over here, what I have done, if you see from this circuit diagram, I have not taken this R2 and JX2 over there, and I have only represented it as by this R friction and windage over there, because R2 and JX2, they will be very, very small as compared to the actual friction and windage over there. So overall, this R2 and this JX2, I am only using this one, because the main power which is actually flowing over here in the rotor, I2 or IR, whatever you want to use the variable, this is only going to be consumed inside this resistor. So first approximation over here is this, that all the power is being used inside your friction and windage path over there. And now the whole circuitry is only RC, JXM and R friction and windage in parallel, because all these three are in parallel. If you take this one on this side, you can see this is all in parallel. So now please no talking at the back. So whatever power you are inputting over here, whatever power, this is a single phase per phase equivalent circuit. So certainly the power is going to be three phase coming in inside the three phase machine. So the total power which you are inputting is actually being used in the stator copper losses, which is R1. Then it is being used in P core, which is over here. And then it is being used in friction and windage plus some miscellaneous, or I call this one as stray losses also. So whatever power is being consumed is being used by this resistor, and this resistance plus some P miscellaneous or the stray power. Now, point over here is it that this R1 is still not known. So we can't subtract this expression from here and call this P core plus friction and windage plus miscellaneous losses as rotational losses. So the point over here is it that if we can somehow find out R1, please listen this carefully, if I can somehow find out R1, which we will do in the next test, then this loss, this RC loss, plus this friction and windage plus some miscellaneous losses, they will be called as P rotational losses. Why? This means that the machine, when it is running at no load, all the losses which are happening at that particular time are actually the core losses, friction and windage, and the stray losses over there. This can be subtracted from it. How it can be subtracted? Which means this PSCL, that is actually the stator copper losses. For that one, I will straight away go on this one, that is the DC test for stator resistance. Now, I don't know how many of you have used that DMM inside the lab, the red color one. Now, you always find that resistance to be something, sometimes 6 ohms, 7 ohms or 8 ohms or something in that range. I guess I still don't remember the exact value, but it's something in that range. Now practically whenever you are measuring it, you are actually using a simple 9 volts or maybe 3 volts battery inside that DMM, and you are actually measuring the resistance over there. Now the probes which you are using over there, they may also have some resistance of maybe like something 0.5 or 1 ohms. So they have some error. Secondly, the second error actually comes in your test which you are doing over there is this, that you are not making the winding heated up. Because when the machine will be running, the rated current is actually going to flow through that. So when it's going to be having a rated current, temperature will increase, and you all know temperature has a direct relationship with the resistance. So when the temperature is going to be more, the resistance is going to be more. So the actual test defined in IEEE section number 112, you have this test to be done at the rated current, by which I mean that you are actually going to give a DC supply. That DC supply is again going to be a variable, and you are actually going to connect this one in the Y configuration or delta configuration. I will come back to the delta configuration later on. So when this is connected in the Y configuration, the whole rated current, so this IDC has to be equal to the rated current of your winding. This is very much important, but since you are applying DC, so the motor is actually not going to run because it's going to produce a static magnetic field inside your windings over there. So it's not going to produce a revolving magnetic field. So the rotor is not going to have any effect over there. The rotor is not going to have any EMF also, nothing. So the only current which you are actually applying over here in this case is actually going to flow through R1 to R1 actually, and it's going to return back. So very simply, your VDC divided by IDC is actually going to be the sum of these two over there. And if supposingly this is connected as delta configuration, because this question is also in the end problems over there. So if you have this R1, R1 and R1, and if it is connected somehow, let me make this diagram over here, and you have again a VDC source. So this VDC source over here, and certainly let me put a voltmeter first over here. So same thing, voltmeter, and I have an ammeter over here also. So this means that, so now in this case, what will be the formula? G, anyone? Because if your machine is internally connected in delta, then you can't change it into Y. This is very important. So if it is something in this case, you have a delta connected winding. So in this case, your VDC divided by your IDC will be equal to the total resistance. And if you can see over there, this is R1 path over here in this one, and then it is 2 paths over there. So this means that this is actually going to be, let me write it down. So this will be R1 parallel to R1 over here. So you have to actually evaluate this whenever you are actually having it. So one thing very important, please find out whenever the question is given in front of you that it is connected in Y or it is connected in delta. So you can actually easily take out your R1 from here. This is actually just simple a parallel combination because this is R1 and this is 2R1. So you can easily find out the formula. Now when you have done this experiment, this will be actually giving you the R1 at your rated current. So this means that the machine is actually going to be heated up. So the windings resistance will be a little bit closer to the real time values of R1. But one thing will be still missing over here because you are doing this test at DC. DC resistance and AC resistance, they differ a lot. And by differing, I am actually referring to a effect which is called as skin effect. Gee, anyone has an idea what is skin effect? You must have heard this one maybe in your physics course or maybe your CAD course anywhere. Whenever there is a high frequency current, maybe in when you go on towards your 4th or 5th semester, this will be much detailed environment over there for skin effect. But whenever there is a wire, and in that wire you have a AC current flowing. And by AC current, I mean something from 50 hertz to something 400 hertz or even more than that. Then what happens? The current does not flow in the center of the wire. It tries to flow on the skin of the wire. So if you have a cross-sectional area, for example, if you have a wire and in this wire, you are actually having a current flow. So this means in this center over here, let me call this one as the center. So the current is only going to try to flow in the outside skirts of the conductor and the center will remain empty. This is because of the high frequency current always trying to flow on the skin of it. It's actually a natural phenomenon occurring because in your conductor. So practically this area is lost. This area is lost. So you are not having any current flow through it. So the resistance of this portion which I am referring over here is certainly going to have a little larger resistance because you have lost some copper area. So this resistance, whatever you are measuring over here, R1, this R1 is not going to be the exact value at your AC. So there will be a slight difference over there. So whatever, but still negligibly almost same you can say. So this R1, whenever you are measuring it, so there is always sometimes a factor. So if you are interested more in that factor, and you will see this factor when you go in the industry, because if you are talking about some multinational industry in Pakistan, where actually whenever they are designing a machine or they are designing a plant, they refer to IEEE standard 112. So every time whenever you are going to see, so this standard is easily available on the web also, you can go through it. So there is always a factor written over there and you have to multiply it because you want to find out that what is the efficiency of it. And nowadays, since energy or the power is very expensive, it's very costly. So whenever there is an industry nowadays, there's a trend to have actually an energy audit. So energy auditing is nowadays a trend in almost all the industry, especially the multinational companies or the big companies. So they always do energy audit, and for energy audit you need to find out your R1 of your machine, certainly, because resistance is very important because the power is being consumed by that resistance. So this one is very, very important. In the lab you are just measuring it by a simple DMM. If you are even more interested in it, we have some sophisticated equipment at a high voltage lab main block, but since that equipment is used over there for some testing of the cables, but if we can bring that equipment in the machines lab, we can measure the resistance equal to approximately 3 decimal digits of microohms or milliohms. That equipment is very, very the same. It works on the same principle, that is, the DC current is flown through that resistance, and then we can measure that resistance through it. So it can measure up to microohms or milliohms in all the wires which are available in your market. And there is always a testing done over there in high voltage lab main block, where it is actually called as the high voltage lab. Of course, of course. किसको? For Y or delta you're talking? हाँ, तो Y इसमें नहीं, you don't have the neutral supposedly. You don't have the neutral in connection over there, because every time the Y connection is over. Yes, certainly if you have the Y connection, then you can connect it over there and just leave it out over there. That's totally okay. But if you don't have the neutral point connected over there, or it's not available for you for connection, then certainly you only have the option of using the two available paths. So now when you have R1, when you have found out, if you apply AC, the motor will start to rotate. So then we can't actually have the actual value. Okay? So बहुत मुश्किल है, because when you are going to give us AC, you are actually going, if you even give one phase, supposedly you only give one phase over there, and supposedly that's the neutral is available. So you are actually having again an induced EMF inside the rotor. So it's going to have an effect over there. So we only want the resistance to be measured. That's why we are doing this as a DC, and then you can multiply it by that factor of for the skin effect or any other factors over there. So normally this test is done at DC. Now when you have found out R1, your R1 is found out, when easy way you can easily find out your stator copper losses. Easy, because you know your I1, what is I1 over there? Ji beta. Skin effect is actually based on the frequency and it's actually related to a little bit physics phenomena. I'm not going to go in that detail at present, but skin effect is very much important, especially when the frequency goes beyond something 400 hertz over there. Now you may argue over here कि जी आपके 50 hertz की तो मोटर है, उसके अंदर 400 hertz कहाँ से आएंगे? The problem over here is it that if you, I don't know how many of you have heard the word harmonics. Gee, anyone who has heard this word harmonics? And I told this term when we talked about the BH curve, and I told you about that the current inside your transformer. Now since you have touched this topic, your transformer was having a current like this, if you remember. And I told you at that time that this one has this has the main fundamental like this, and then there is another frequency which is like this working over here like this. And this is the third harmonic. You can see what is the frequency over here. This is the third harmonic. So whenever a device is working and it is a non-linear device, remember the word is non-linear, because here the current is not following the voltage waveform. If the voltage waveform is like this, the current is having this over here, fact over there. So this is a non-linear device. When this is happening, a non-linear device, harmonics are always present, and harmonics are always in a very good system. Since first one is always going to be the fundamental, then there will be the third harmonic, then there will be the fifth harmonic, then there will be the seventh harmonic, then there will be the ninth harmonic, and 11, and so on. Now if your frequency in your system or the working frequency is 50 hertz, you multiply 5 by 50, that comes out to be 250 hertz. If you multiply 7 by 50, 350 hertz. So in any device, if it's an electromechanical, you are always going to have a lot of losses corresponding to this harmonics, and these harmonics are traveling inside your conductor. So those harmonics will have an effect because of the skin effect. 50 hertz is the current, then there is no skin effect, no issues over there. So आपके पास घर में, if you have a bulb over there, that bulb approximately does not have any non-linearity. It's almost a sine wave. So you apply a sine wave to that bulb, you get a sine wave current over there. There is no non-linearity. But if there is a non-linearity like this, I don't know how many of you have seen this waveform, but if you are interested in finding out the waveform of these CFLs over there, the waveform, if the voltage is like this, the voltage waveform of these CFLs is something like this. Now this is totally non-linear, and this is a spiking current just at the peak of your voltage waveform, positive or negative both. So here the harmonic content is so much. For example, it's almost 49% to 53% harmonic content in this waveform, and harmonic content should not be more than 4% according to IEEE. So these CFLs, ये आज से कोई maybe like something 10 years or 12 years back, the government of Pakistan had a deal with Asian Bank at that time, and they argued on this कि जी हम वो सारे bulb, we are going to change those bulbs and replace it by CFLs because they were 100 watts, and the 100 watt equivalent light was being given by maybe a 30 watts energy saver. So they were actually trying to save energy because Pakistan was not producing that adequate. They had a small seminar also. We also went over there at that time. Me and my colleague was there from UET as an academic expert over there. We also had this argument over there that the harmonic content was there, but since they were bent upon taking that loan from Asian Bank, and I guess some of the amount was also as some कोई वो थी वहाँ पे, it was some charity also at that time, so government was not ready to listen to any. Otherwise, if they could have put some legislation at that point, so energy savers which were having this type of current waveform could have been abandoned. But if you actually try to, I can't take the names of 2-3 companies, but if you are talking about something Philips or maybe Orient, these two are still having a little bit better harmonics, still 30%, 35%. But if you go for some second or third rated companies, their power content or their harmonic content is very much polluted, and इसका नुकसान आपको नहीं है. It's not difficult for you. The problem is with the power company, their transformers and their system is going to be polluted because of this harmonic, and ये इतना ज़्यादा बढ़ जाएगा. I don't know how many of you have done it before, but if you go to Liberty or somewhere, because they have like CFLs in large quantity, एक एक प्लाजा के अंदर कोई 200, 300, 300, 400 लगे हुए हैं. So the voltage at that point, if you see the voltage at that point, it drops from that 230 volt to approximately 180, 170 in some cases. And again skin effect comes into play because the harmonics are there, the resistance increases, the drop is more. So what happens? The drop in the voltage is significant over there. So, but this problem was done like 15 or 12 years back. Now it's almost impossible to revert it back. Now the only way to actually revert it back is this, that you only allow a designated energy saver manufacturer to manufacture it, so that the current waveform is not, or at least having a harmonic content equal to 10% or maybe 15%. So this is a very big problem in Pakistan, and this issue actually, I don't know how many of you will be doing your masters in power specialization, but this actually comes in the subject of power quality, and this power quality is a very very significant issue in Pakistan. और आप लोग अक्सर यू मे बी आर्गिंग कि जी आपके घर में हार्ड डिस्क लगी हुई है कंप्यूटर के ऊपर, अव्वल तो हार्ड डिस्क आपकी उड़ सकती है बिकॉज इफ़ यू इम्प्रॉपर शट डाउन इट, टर्न ऑफ द स्विच. बट इफ़ योर होम इज सिचुएटेड विद सम factory or somewhere where it's a plaza having the CFLs over there, your hard disk can also malfunction or become dead because of these harmonics also. So this is very very important that the power quality subject in Pakistan grid has to be taken into accordance or taken into control whenever you are designing. But since हमारे यहाँ power नहीं पूरी हो रही, power quality की बात तो बहुत दूर की बात है, यहाँ power नहीं पूरी होती, so how you are actually going to do it over there? अगर हाँ, you can come in, you can do it. But normally, especially if you are in Pakistan, और अगर आप कोई मोटर परचेज कर रहे हो, इट्स रेयर कि आपके पास जो करंट वेव फॉर्म है वो साइनोसाइडल है, बहुत रेयर है. कोई छोटी मोटी मोटर हो गई 500-600 वाट 1 हॉर्स पावर, देन सर्टेनली इट इज़ पॉसिबल. बट इफ़ यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट 3 हॉर्स पावर, 2 हॉर्स पावर और 4 हॉर्स पावर, द करंट वेव फॉर्म बहुत मुश्किल है. इट ऑलवेज गोइंग टू हैव सम grip like this, or maybe sometimes if the voltage waveform is like this, एक type of waveform ये भी है, this is also a third harmonic waveform which is also possible sometimes inside the machine. This is a in phase third harmonic. जो मैंने पीछे बनाया था यहाँ पे, this is an out of phase third harmonic added. By out of phase I mean because when you are going to add a third harmonic over there, this will start with negative, go with positive, and then go with like this. And this will be like this over there. So that's why you are going to have this effect over there in your grid over there. So now when you have got R1, okay ji, now you have got R1, coming back to this one, you can find PSCL. And when you have got PSCL, you can easily find out your input power, which is already known to you because of the wattmeter which you have added. So that will be equal to PSCL plus the rotational power or the rotational losses, and rotational losses are equal to this form. Now when you have found out this rotational losses, these rotational losses will be constant. Okay? Even if you run the machine now at full load, because the core losses are dependent upon what? They are dependent upon the voltage. And if your machine has the voltage at this point, this is E1 voltage, if this voltage is approximately the same as V phase, then the losses inside this RC and JXM, they almost are same. So it's not that much different. So practically this rotational losses, if it is found, you can actually estimate the P core plus friction and windage plus the stray losses over there. And there will be not much change, maybe like 1% or 2%, but not more than that. Now when you have found out this one, the other thing which this test is actually going to give us is this, that this JXM and this are friction and windage. Now which of these two is larger? कोई मुझे बताएगा यहाँ पे? जी. JXM will be the larger quantity because this is the air gap magnetization and this one is the friction and windage over there. So when you have a larger resistance or a larger impedance in parallel with a smaller one, certainly you can replace it by the simple smaller one value. Again, this is an approximation, but if you go directly to your IEEE standard 112, you won't find this approximation over there. It's just for your undergraduate level that this JXM and this one, they are actually having. So RC and this one, they are replaced by just simply your friction and windage over there. So now your circuitry is just simply this one. So now when your circuitry is just simply this one, so you can easily find out your Z equivalent. And what is your Z equivalent? This is going to be equal to X1 plus XM when you are having your phase voltage divided by the no load current. So whatever no load current is flowing over there, you can easily find out. Again an approximation. Why? What an approximation? Because you are assuming that R1 and this one, they are so small that they are not having that much impact over there. So practically you have an approximation over there. This one is equal to X1 plus XM over here. But sadly, there is no way to separate X1 and XM over here because they are actually coming in series over there. So you don't have any path over here which you can actually reduce this X1 and X1 over here. Now, based on this first test, this is the no load test which you have done. The second test which you have done over here is the DC test for the stator resistance. And the third test which you have to do is the lock rotor test. And many of you have done this experiment in the lab in which you are holding the machine. You are not allowing the machine to rotate. But the point over here, just like you did in your transformer, that you had the transformer short circuited from the secondary side and you applied a reduced voltage. So when you have applied a reduced voltage, the point over here is it that the main current path is this resistance path over there. The current will be still flowing through JXM and RC, but their path resistance is so big as compared to this resistance. So the current is only going to take this path over there, and again an approximation that based on this V phase and based on the current I1, certainly this will be the short circuit current or the rated current. So the resistance which you are going to measure or impedance which you are going to measure will be R1 plus JX1 and JX2 plus R2. Now why R2? Because this resistance will be equal to 0 because you are not allowing the machine to rotate. So when the machine is not going to rotate, NR is 0, slip is equal to 1, this resistance vanishes. You only have R2, JX2, JX1 and R1, and again an approximation that these two are negligible. So the point, you have done this calculation before in your lab as well. So you have first of all the power, that is actually the input power. Certainly you will be attaching a 3-phase watt meter over there. So this will be W1 plus W2 giving you the power over there, and based on this power you will be actually finding out your cos of theta, and this cos of theta will be actually for your R1 plus JX1 plus R2 plus JX2, so whatever angle. And when you have found out your power factor, you can use this power factor for your what is ZLR. This is the lock rotor in the subscript over there. So whatever phase voltage divided by the I1, and you can convert this one I1, this is actually rated value. So when the rated value division over there, one thing very important, normally the students in the lab also do this mistake. This is phase voltage, and here in your book they have taken it as Vt divided by under root 3, assuming that Vt was the terminal voltage given in the data or the nameplate rating, and this is always line to line. So when you have line to line voltage, you have to divide it by under root 3 to find out phase voltage. So that phase voltage divided by the I1 rated value, this will give you ZLR in magnitude form. And when you have the magnitude form over here, you can convert it into RLR plus JXLR. Now there is a bar over there. Now this bar over here is very important. Why? Listen to this very carefully. If you remember, in practical induction machine, the stator was having a frequency 50 Hertz. But when the machine is running, the rotor has a frequency of just 2 Hertz, 3 Hertz or 4 Hertz. So there is a difference in frequency, and whenever there is a difference in frequency, the reactance system, they have their impedances or reactances different over there. So practically this circuit or this experiment which you are doing over here, the lock rotor test, this has to be done for the stator part at 50 Hertz. For the rotor part, it has to be done at 4 Hertz or 3 Hertz or 5 Hertz, whatever that value. So the problem here is that because you are applying an AC voltage and the rotor is not rotating, the stator is also working at 50 Hertz, the rotor is also working at 50 Hertz. So now over here, the reactance of the rotor, JX2, which you are going to measure, is going to be different. And I am assuming over here that JX2 is a non-linear material. If you remember your BH curve, whenever we had a BH curve over here, let me draw this one over here, you had a B over here, you had a H over there, assuming that it was going, but afterward it saturates. Whenever it saturates, so supposingly you measured your X at this point over there, because this was going to give you your L, you can convert L into F. But a little different when you are going to have a little different frequency, maybe the X changes to some other value, because frequency has a skin effect and skin effect has other problems over there. So you are going to have a different frequency. So according to this document, which still I don't personally agree, but the problem is this, that this is taken from the IEEE section standard 112. What they are going to do, they are going to change the frequency. Instead of 50 Hertz, they are going to apply supposedly something from 20 to 25 Hertz. Now still 20 to 25 Hertz is not this frequency over here. So this will be a problem over there. But still, when you are going to use this 25 Hertz, this will be actually having the same effect approximately which a 5 Hertz or a 4 Hertz or a 3 Hertz will actually bring. Still not exactly, again negligibly will have some differences. But when you are going to do this test, this will give you XLR bar. Now when this XLR bar is found out by this JZLR sine of theta is already known because the theta is already known to you. Now this XLR bar is actually equal to X1 bar plus X2 bar. Why this is a bar? Because this is working, or this experiment has been done at approximately 25 Hertz. We want this one to be done at approximately either 50 Hertz for X1 and for 4 Hertz or 5 Hertz for this one. Now in your book they have not given this value, but what they have done, that x1 bar plus x2 bar, they are doing it and converting it into this over here by f rated divided by f test. So if you did your experiment at 25 hertz, this will come over there, and your rated is back at 50 hertz. So they are again converting it back to its 50 hertz equivalent value, and then you have your x1 plus x2. But my suggestion, still you don't need to do that one, but my suggestion would be that when you have this x1 bar plus x2 bar, you make them separate, which means x1 bar and x2 bar, separate them and then take them to your respective frequencies. Which I mean by that, when you have this done, x1 bar and x2 bar, and if you are supposedly working in design class B, then you know that x1 would be approximately equal to 0.4 XLR, x2 would be equal to the 60% of that value. So when you have separated them, then you can do this one for your stator with 50 hertz, for rotor you do it for 5 hertz or 6 hertz. That's the main thing. But again, this is a standard over value, so we are going to follow this one. So this x1 bar plus x2 bar, first of all, you will convert it back to its 50 hertz or 60 hertz value, and then you are going to separate them. If you have a wound rotor, which means a slip ring motor, or a design A or design D, then this is 50%. We have done this design classes in the last lecture, so this is design A and design class D. But if you have a design class B, then you have something 0.4 to 0.7 over there. And if you can see over here, this is design class C, then you have 0.3 and 0.7. कोई मुझे बताएगा why in design class C the X2 is more? हमने किया था. The slot was a deep bar rotor. That was a deep bar or a double cage. So it was extending more in the rotor. So X2 was larger there because the X2 flux or the flux produced by that rotor current, it's not going to reach the stator. So that's why this is 0.7. Again, these values, this value, this value, and this value, they are based on the data which is available. Practically, it cannot be verified. Maybe it is something like 0.45, this is 0.55. It may differ, but normally you have X1 and X2. But you even don't need to separate this X1 and X2. Why? Because they're always coming in series in your equations of your torque or whatever you are calculating over there. So this is your lock rotor test. But this lock rotor test is done at 25 hertz or 20 hertz, whatever that frequency. In the lab, we don't have that facility, so you're already doing at 50 hertz over there. So when you have done it, you have the effect over there, you convert it back into your 50 hertz value, you get your X1 and X2 and separate them according to whatever design class you are working on. Please memorize this design classes values, because whenever the numerical or your question this is asked, these values are never given over there. It's very easy to realize because this is 0.5, this is 0.4, 0.6 and 0.3 and 0.7. Now, coming back to the example, I'm doing example number 6.8, just the few parts of it, 3 parts. This is the question, 7.5 horsepower. Acha mujhe batayega koi yahan pe ji, we are almost at the end of this chapter. Can anyone tell me what is 7.5 horsepower, input or output? This is the output power rating. Please be very careful whenever you are actually trying to find out the efficiency of such a machine. Treat this one as the output. The input power is going to be dependent upon your current and power factor and all that stuff. This is a design class A. You have frequency of 60 hertz, 208 volt. This voltage, since it is not mentioned, this is always line to line, and you can call this one also as VT, that is the terminal voltage over there. Number of poles are 4, so this means that your speed is something going to be equal to NS equal to 120 into frequency is 60, so divided by 4, this is going to be 1800 RPM, and it's Y connected. I1 rated is 28 amperes, it's a big machine, and the DC test results are there. You can see you gave just a current of 13 or voltage of 13.6 volts. The current came out to be 28 amperes. So you can see the rated current was flown in the DC test. So you can find out the resistance easily over here. For the no load test, over here I have a different data. You must have done this one in your lab also, that you have applied 208 volt. 208 volt is the same phase line to line voltage. We will convert this one into the phase voltage later on. The 3 currents are shown, IA, IB and IC. These 3 currents, you can see there's a slight difference over there. Rarely is possible that you will get a machine in which all the 3 phases are exactly there, because there may be some meter error, there may be some error because of the machines having a little bit unsymmetrical winding, maybe the resistance. So you can see this is 8.12, this is 8.20, this is 8.18. Now which value to take? you are just going to average it out, which means that all the three phases, you're just going to take their average, and that average value of the no load test which you are going to take out, because you require I1 over here for the no load. P input power is given, that is actually 420 watts. For the lock rotor test, the applied voltage, you can see this is 25 volt. The test frequency is kept at 15 hertz. Okay? Maybe it can go on to 20, 25, but in this expression over here, or this example, this is taken as 15 hertz. The input power is 920 watts. So this is a lock rotor test. The current IA, IB and IC, same phenomena over there, because you have three windings over there, and these three windings are having a little bit disparity in their current. Now when you are going to solve this numerical, let me solve this one over here. I guess the DC test is first over there. So if I want to find out the, first of all, the resistance, this is Y connected. So I guess this will be very simple. R1 would be equal to VDC divided by 2I DC, and what is VDC? This will be equal to 13.6 divided by 2 into 28, because I have this one over here. Anyone with a calculator, please verify this one. I have the value over here from the book, but just verify. Anyone with a calculator, please. So this is based on the DC test which I am doing. So R1 is equal to 13.6 divided by 2 into 2, 28 actually. Please, anyone? 0.242. आगे क्या है? 8. So actually the book one has actually converted it into 243. That is also okay. But again, every time, please remember, whenever you are talking about a resistance, please make the resistance in at least 3 or 4 decimal digits after the point. And one thing very, very important, in mid, I still had no deduction for your units which you have missed. This time, you won't write the units. I will deduct marks over there. In the midterm, I had a little leniency over there, but this time, please don't do this one. The next thing over here, the no load test. Using the no load test over there. So now over here, the first thing for the no load test, take the average of these three. So when I have to find out the average, this will be I1 no load. This will be equal to IA plus IB plus IC, and certainly divided by 3. What are the three currents? Let me write it down. 8.12 plus 8.20 plus 8.18. This will be divided by 3. Ji, please, anyone give me a calculator value. 8.1667 amperes over here. So I have this one as the value of the no load. Now based on this one, I know P input power. You can write down the equation. That will be equal to the stator copper losses plus the rotational losses that will be over here. Now stator copper losses, you can easily find it out because you have the value of 3I1 square IR1, and certainly this is at no load. So this means 3 into I1 is 8.1667 square multiplied by R1 is already there with you. This is equal to 2428. Gee, anyone please give me the answer. 48.58. Now you can see your book has an answer of 48.7. So book वाले की कुछ ना कुछ mathematical mistakes हैं इस पूरी book के अंदर. So don't exactly just follow this one. So this is your stator copper losses. And if you are interested in finding out, those still not asked in this over here, if it is asked to you find out the rotational losses, this will be input power minus. Now what is input power? G, 420 watts? 420 watts. So this means this will be equal to 420 watts minus this 48.58 watts. So this, please subtract these two. 371.419 watts. So this is the rotational losses. And one thing very, very important, this includes the core loss plus the friction and windage plus any miscellaneous or stray losses. Okay? Not asked in this question, but better to find it out because sometimes you have to use this one. Now the next thing over here, since we are still working on the no load test, we know the voltage 208. So this means that first of all, VT is equal to 208 volts. Converting this one into phase voltage, because this is Y connected, So this will be equal to Vt divided by under root 3. Please always, whenever you are converting it, please write down assisted text with your mathematical statements. So I know whenever I am checking it, or any examiner knows that you know why you are doing it. You are not just copying it from anywhere. So you know this is Y connected. That's why you are actually doing it. So this will be 208 divided by under root 3. Ji, please give me the value. 120.08 value. So this is your V phase, and why I need this V phase, because I need to find out x1 plus xm. So this will be Z no load. That will be equal to V phase divided by I1 at no load. So this will be equal to, this is 120.08, and what is I1 no load? That is 8.1667. So this comes out to be, please, 14.704 ohms. So now when you have got this value over here, now this value is equal to x1 plus xm. This is again an approximation. This is very important over here. Now we can't separate x1 and xm unless and until at the end of the expression, when we have completed this numerical, we will have x1. Then you can actually find out xm over there. Otherwise, at present, this is 14.704 ohms at present, and you will leave this over here. The last part over here for this numerical, the locked rotor test. So that the data which is coming on now is coming on for the locked rotor. So coming back to the data, I have Vt equal to 25. So this means if my Vt is equal to 25 volts, so this means that corresponding to this one, my V phase at LR is going to be equal to 25 divided by under root 3. 14.43 volts. And then I have the next data. I have frequency F, I have P input. Okay, this will be cos of theta would be equal to the input power divided by under root 3 Vt into IL. Achha, I don't have still the IL, so I need to find out the IL, or actually I1 at LR, because I have been given 3 values. So these 3 values have to be again, so these are the 3 values over here. So I have to use this one. Okay, sorry, मैंने गलत कर दिया इधर से, नहीं खैर ठीक है. I have 28.1. This is plus actually, not multiply. This is 28 plus 27.6. Again average. Please give me the answer. 27.9 amperes. So now using this one, what is the input power for the locked rotor test? This is 920 watts. So this is 920. So of course this one, please remember, you have to do this one before it, because this value is coming up afterwards. So this will be under root 3. Vt is the same, actually 25. I've used the line to line voltage multiplied by IL, which is 27.9. G, please give me the answer. 0.762. Power factor, no units, please. Don't do this mistake. So now what you have now, your power factor is equal to cos of theta equal to 0.762. So if you are asked to find out your angle, this will be equal to cos inverse 0.762. Please give me the angle. 40.40. So again degrees, please have your calculator always in degrees. Radians bina karke answer nikal dena. This is very important. Now you have ZLR. So what will be ZLR equal to? This will be equal to V phase divided by I1. Please, no talking. V phase is 14.43. So this will be divided by 27.9. Please give me the answer, Ji. 0.517. This will be ohms actually. So this is ohms. And now you can have ZLR converted into RLR plus JXLR bar, and this will be equal to, this will be 0.517 into cos of 40.40 plus 0.517 into sine of 40.40. Of course, J will be coming up here. G, please give me the answer. Calculator, please. G. कितनी है? This has to be something 0.394. Please confirm this. Plus J, I'm taking this value from the book. So 394. ठीक है, और दूसरा वाला भी करो. X 0.335. So you have this ZLR, and based on this ZLR, now you have the data. Now this is your RLR, and this is your XLR bar. Now you have to convert this XLR bar, which will be actually X1 bar plus X2 bar. So XLR bar has to be converted into the rated divided by the the test frequency, and here you will have the XLR. Actually, this will be bar on this side. So this will be over here. What is your rated? We know this is equal to 50 Hertz because we want to do it for 50. The test frequency was 15, and I have this one as 0.335 ohms. G, please give me the value. XLR is equal to, actually the test frequency is not 50, that's 60, because the book is actually using the 61. G, please 60, it will be 4 times this 4. Again? 1.34 ohms. Okay, so you have your XLR, and now you have X1 plus X2 equal to XLR. This is a design class A, I guess, if I'm not wrong. So this means your X1, if I go back to my data over here, design class A, you have 0.5 and 0.5. So this means half of this would be equal to, this will be 1.34, half of it. Ji, kitna hai half of it? Again, sorry? 0.67 ohms. And X2 is the very same over here, 0.67 ohms. Now the last thing which we missed over there, or actually the remaining X1 would be equal to, we had this equation over here for 14.704. So this was 14.704 minus X1. So this will be 14.704 minus 0.67 ohms. G, please, 14.034. So this is your XM. So you have this value. One thing very important, please, every time whenever you are doing a numerical, have a habit of making this one either a box every time, whatever values, or if you have time, please copy this value, or the end results, actually the RLR and all that at the end of your numerical. So if your whole process is okay, I can just see the end result and you can be given marks over there. So at the end of it over there, you can just write on all the values over here, whatever you have found out. So this is your numerical over there. The next part of this one, the B part, you can do it yourself. It's related to your torque over there. So they are actually asking the torque of this machine, because all the data is there. You have to first of all convert it into its Thevenin circuit, the same thing which we did in the previous lecture. Okay, coming on to the last article of this one, that is induction generator. Now listen to this very carefully, because this is more like a article coming on in a theoretical way. Because details of this one, if you go in your course of your renewable energy course, maybe it gets offered in your session, because sometimes it's not offered every time, because this is not offered for session 2018. Maybe it gets offered for you. It's a very important course at present, because everywhere you will find out the renewable energy, the solar, the wind, every time. Wind is not available in that much in vogue in Lahore or in Punjab, but if we go towards the coastal belt, the Gwadar region, or especially the Thatta region, you will find out wind energy. And induction generators find their best use in the windmills or wind energy department. And for those who still miss that generator part, when we talked about this one, the point maximum when you have reached this one over here, this point over here is called as the push over point, just like you called the point over here, this one as pull out. This one over here in generator case, you call this one as the pushover, and your speed when it goes beyond this point up till this range. So this range which I am making shaded is actually the point when the induction machine, which has been converted into an induction generator, it will supply power to your grid. Now, the interesting part, you are doing this experiment in your lab. What you are doing, you start an induction machine coupled with another machine. Okay? First of all, you find out the direction of rotation of your machine, the DC machine, and then you find out the direction of rotation of your induction machine also. You first of all start your induction machine as a motor, and at the very same time you also start the machine of your DC machine in the same direction, of course. Of course, if they will be empty, then they will be actually working as the opposite over there, and it will be a mechanical problem over there. Now, what happens when you increase, supposingly your machine your machine was rated for supposingly 4 poles over there, and it is a 50 hertz case if I'm talking about Pakistan. So what happens, the NS comes out to be 1500 RPM. Your NR at no load comes out to be something 1480 RPM because the machine is working at no load. As soon as your machine now starts working, the DC machine now gives a speed equal to 1500 RPM. The machine reaches this point. At this point, the machine is going to be stated to be called as the floating point over there. And as soon as the DC machine increases its speed, so now the induction phenomena will be lost, and now the machine is going to give this amount of power over here, or this amount of torque over there in the grid, and the machine will be converted into a generator mode. Now the problem over here, whenever the generator is actually supplying the power to the grid at any given point in this shaded region, well and good. But the problem will occur if you want to start this induction generator as a standalone. What I mean by standalone, supposingly you are in some desert, or maybe you are in some coastal area, you don't have any grid over there, you don't even have some battery over there or nothing. You only have wind over there. What you will do, you have some fan blades also. आप कहते हैं जी मैं fan blades के साथ एक induction machine couple करता हूँ, and I start to have some power. So will it generate any power? No. Why? Because your induction generator, if I take it back to your equivalent circuit of your induction generator, it does not have any source over there inside it. Your synchronous generator has a DC electromagnet inside its rotor, and we rotate that electromagnet by a mechanical prime mover over there. Here in this case, you don't have anything. Now, even if you had, so the source is not there, this one will behave just like a molten iron or whatever revolving over there. If you want it to generate, now listen to this very carefully, if you want it to generate, the rotor should have some residual magnetism, and that residual magnetism will induce a voltage inside the stator. So this means that there should be some magnetism inside the rotor, and as soon as it will induce, the problem is still not over. Why? Because if the source is being produced or the magnetic flux is being produced, you have an inductor here, you have an inductor here, you have an inductor here. And for inductor, we all know that you require reactive power. So that reactive power is not available for you. So what will happen, the problem would be, if I go back to your, if you have an induction machine, and you are trying to run it over there, supposingly I have this machine over here, a 3-phase, certainly. So this is my induction, which I want to actually make it as a generator, and supposingly it has some residual magnetism. And I have some load attached over there. Let me call this one a little small, and I have a load attached. Let me call this load connected NY. And it's simple resistance over there, which means this is connected over here, this is connected over here, this is connected over here. Now, the problem here is this: even if it has some residual magnetism, it will produce some voltage. That voltage will be available at the two terminals available anywhere inside your three-phase machine, and that voltage will be applied upon the resistor, but that same voltage is also applied across the equivalent circuit of your induction machine. And here, when that voltage is going to be present over here, that voltage is going to be applied across the JXM part. It's also going to be applied across this JX1 and also across JX2. And it does not have reactive power, because ये तो आपने खुद ही generate की है. So you are not putting some reactive power. In synchronous generator, you have a DC source over there, जो आप externally provide कर रहे हो. Here in this case, you are producing whatever you have inside from over here. So the only way you can produce reactive power over here is that you are going to, if I go back, actually I have to copy that circuit here every time I'm having it. So what you have to do over here, you will have to attach capacitors on the output, and by attaching capacitors on the output, so this will be 3 capacitors over here connected in this formation. Now it can be delta formation also, Y configuration also. I've just made capacitors over there. Now what will happen? This generator, when it will produce some voltage, it will charge these capacitors. And what we know, capacitors provide reactive power. That reactive power will be given back to the induction generator, and it will produce more EMF because the residual flux will increase over there. Then it will give more power, more capacitor will be charged. So at a point will come when this whole process completes and the voltage being produced becomes equal to the no load voltage or the load voltage. So I'm supposing that the resistance is not connected at that time. So when your machine has produced that no load voltage, then you can have the load connected over there. Otherwise, if you have a load connected, and I'm assuming at present that my resistance is only the load, it does not have any, I'm talking about here or here, it does not have any inductance over there. So if there is an inductance, it will again also require Q, because every time there is a reactance, it also demands Q. ये Q कहाँ से आएगा? This Q has to come from the capacitor. So this is very, very important that you are not going to attach the load unless and until you have produced this much voltage over here. So this is very, very important that when you have produced this much voltage, then you attach the load. And if your load has an inductor inside it, which is almost possibly true, because every time you have a fan working, it has an inductance, you have an energy saver, it has an inductance or anything, so you will require. And the worst part of this, since this is being run by a wind turbine, the wind turbine or wind has not a constant speed. It can vary from 3 meters per second to 9 meters per second, or in some hurricanes to 12 meters per second also. So the speed is variable. So when speed is variable, the output frequency will be also variable. So the problem over here is that whenever you are going to run this setup as a standalone, you require first of all a residual magnetism inside your rotor. Secondly, you require a capacitors to be attached over there. That capacitor is going to give that reactive power over there. It will increase its magnetism, and then when you have given its magnetism, then you can attach your load over there. And if your load has a reactive power demand, then your capacitor has to be increased also, because these capacitors were only providing Q to your induction machine. Now they have to provide to your load also. So induction generator as a standalone is a very difficult process. And if you want to run it as a standalone, you require capacitors over there. Now, in the previous case, when you were running this one connected with the grid, आप कर क्या रहे थे वहाँ पे? You were trying to, first of all, started it as a motor, then you increase the speed so that now it becomes a generator. So now in that case, your residual magnetism, which was already there when it was a motor, makes it into a generator over there. And in induction generator, this speed variation is very, very important. And in this speed variation, your wind has to flow. In this speed variation, your wind has to flow. Now, this speed variation is so small that sometimes you will have to change the speed or the resistance R2. Let me call it over here as this one, and like this. So now when you have changed this one, let me call it, this is R2. This is supposedly in your book they have called as 3 times R2. So now what happens over there? Previously the speed variation was just this. Now over here you have a speed variation this much. And this will be beneficial. Why? Because the wind is flowing having a not a constant speed. It's variable. So you don't need a big gearbox. Because अगर आपने gearbox लगाना है, if you have to attach a gearbox, your speed should remain inside this one. And you always know mechanical gearboxes, they are always going to have some efficiency loss. It's not going to be always 100%. There is going to be some loss. So when you have changed your resistance from R2 to 3R2 by using either a wound rotor or maybe using a design class C or whatever you are taking it. So now the point over here is it that now you have more space over there. But this is only possible if you are working it in an induction generator mode. So from this point to this point over there, let me mark this point also. So this is your pushover point. So now the region of interest is equal to this region over there. And there are 2 modes as we have just talked about. One is called as the standalone mode over there. So if you are running your machine as a standalone, or you are running it as connected with the grid. So you first of all start it as a motor and then convert it into a generator over there. So this is one way. Now one problem whenever you are going to run it as a standalone, as I just told you, that the frequency is going to be variable. So when you are going to vary in this region, aapke bulbs, if they have been made for 50 hertz, when they go up till supposedly like something 60 hertz or 70 hertz, so there will be a problem over there when the frequency changes. But if it is connected with the grid, when it is connected with the grid itna bada hai, it's so big that even a slight change in the frequency from maybe just like even a 1 kilowatt or a 5 kilowatt turbine, the grid frequency is not going to be altered that much. So the best case is this, that an induction machine always is connected with the grid. And you will find out there are wind turbines in Thatta or Mirpur, Mithelo. You have a lot of wind turbines over there. They are like something 50 megawatts or 10 megawatts or 20 megawatts. And they are always connected to the grid. So they, whenever they give the power, they always give the power towards the grid. They are never provided to any standalone. There is a village over there, you can't provide it because the frequency variation is going to be so more over there. So every time an induction generator is being visited or being asked, very importantly, Q is never produced. This is very important. Q is never produced. P is always produced by an induction generator. So when Q is not produced, you will have to attach capacitors over there, and those capacitors are going to give that reactive power. And if your load also has a reactive power demand, you will have to add more capacitors inside your circuitry so that it can additionally provide Q here and Q on this side. Synchronous generator, on the other hand, it can provide P and Q both. P is coming from the turbine because that's the mechanical power, and Q is coming from the electromagnet or the DC electromagnet that is being given to your rotor over there, which is rotating with the speed ns, so that you can have an induced EMF inside your stator or the armature windings. Kindly do a reading of this article. I have not gone through very much detail through this article. But kindly give a reading, because this is very important, because nowadays if you go in some industry or some job where they are working on renewable energies, they always touch the point of induction generators, because they are the main thing for wind turbines. You won't add a DC generator for wind turbine. You always have an induction generator added for a wind turbine. This is all for chapter number 6G over here. And